So we've been in New Zealand for about 6 weeks now, and I'd say we found a pretty good travel pace and a really good training pace. The main point of this video too is to show some of my unforeseen challenges and struggles with staying climbing fit while I'm on the road, and to just show how training's going in general. And at the end of this video, I'll show what a typical training session looks like for me. Between the climbing, we saw some pretty amazing places, and going into this trip, we knew it wasn't just a climbing trip, so we were more than happy to just be on the road. We started at the very top of the North Island in Cape Reinga, and now we can say we've made it to the very bottom of the South Islands, to the Bluffs, and now we're in Christchurch, trying to figure out our next step.
Oh man, River, what you doing that for? You know it ain't gonna help. Oh man, River got his hands in the mud, looking for gold in the wishing well.
In Wellington, I met some nice locals who were happy to take us outside and show us around. We went to a place called The Rack. It's about 40 minutes from Wellington, and it's right by the ocean, and it's definitely worth the trip out there.
To the country, get a little lonely in my mind, feeling kind of funky, need to find peace among the pines, no I'm not a junkie.
Will got on a boulder for the first time in his life and got up a V1, and then he fell halfway up a V0 and popped his knee out of socket, and that kind of marked the end of his climbing on this trip. And then I fell and tweaked my ankle pretty bad, and we both left the boulder field limping and have continued to limp for the next 3 weeks or so. I faced a lot of unforeseen challenges while I've been out here in terms of staying climbing fit while I'm on the road, and I'll explain those throughout this video, but the first revolves around nutrition. We're living on a pretty cheap budget out here, so we didn't really prioritize healthy foods. We kind of just went with the cheapest option, and because of this, our diet obviously suffered, and we just ended up feeling just heavier and more groggy and, I don't know, less motivated to train in general. But since then, our priorities have changed, and now I'd say we're eating pretty well. So my second biggest challenge revolves around getting enough sleep. This wasn't so much an issue when we were camping. It was a little cold during the night, but we still slept through the night. This more became an issue when we decided to stop camping and just travel from hostel to hostel instead. The hostels themselves were always clean and comfortable, but our roommates were always a wild card. People just have really odd habits that don't need to be brought up in this video, but I say all that to make the point that within the last month, I can say without exaggerating at all that I've slept through the night 3 times, and that's been a pretty big bummer. My third biggest challenge is finding the motivation to train. Because this isn't a climbing focused trip, there's no immediate motivation of a project to train for or a competition to train for. It kind of feels like I'm just training to train, which is kind of hard to find the motivation in sometimes. But I'm making it work and sticking with the program. So we've had one day in Castle Hill so far, and we pretty quickly discovered that it's the land of no holds. So the highlight end of the day happened to be this barefoot run and jump. And Will's knee was feeling alright, so he decided to give it a go. But he got about halfway up and then bailed and re-injured his knee, so he's definitely out for the rest of the trip, but we're happy to be here. So yeah, those are some of the biggest challenges for me on this trip so far, and if you've hung around this long and are interested, the rest of this video is going to be dedicated to showing what a typical training session for me looks like. So I do 2 large muscle-oriented sets directly before pulling on the tension flashboard, which primarily works your fingers and forearms, which is a pretty small group. And I asked Tyler to explain why this is beneficial because he's who made it clear to me, and this is what he said. When we are trying to maximize recruitment in any movement, we want the force to be brought on slow or the muscles to exercise until failure. When using isometrics at 5 to 7 seconds, we do this effectively. If we use a larger movement first, we slowly ramp up the body's release of chemicals responsible for muscular work and hormones for growth. Doing this before finger training is important to maximize adaptation. So I then pull on the tension flashboard for 5 to 7 seconds, as hard as I possibly can with my arms at 90 degrees. Following this, I take a 30-second break before repeating this 3 more times for a total of 4 pulls. This completes one set, and I repeat the process with 4 of the different hand grips the tension board has. Once I have used these 4 grips with my arms at 90 degrees, I repeat the entire process again with my arms at 120 degrees. This creates my 8 sets. Keep in mind I do 2 variations of the large muscular group exercises before each new set, and I try to change these up with every workout.
Policeman in a Volvo said she didn't go. Now she's gone. She didn't go, didn't leave a note. Somewhere in Nevada, they said she drank the water. Now somebody's daughter is never coming home. She didn't leave a note. The line was tight, time was right to hit the road. Come on, let's go. She's living nice, she's living right there on the coast. Just wondering, is this the way things go?
So I conclude every workout by doing some shoulder conditioning, and I have 3 main exercises that I use. And with each exercise, I do 4 sets of 7 to 10 reps for each set.
Find herself a nice man, like she knows she can. Some boy like the old time, said he liked to spend time at fireplace and red wine, maybe an early bedtime. Oh, he'll draw a fine line, show a fine, nice girl.
So our 3rd video, I'll be back in Salt Lake City, and it'll show the whole process of getting retested with Dr. Tyler Nelson, and it'll show analyzing those results to see whether I got weaker as a climber, I just maintained, or I got stronger as a climber. But yeah, that's it for this video. Right now we're in Christchurch, New Zealand, and just trying to figure out what the next step is. But yeah, thanks for watching.